After Dark with the Roadie on Rocket FM.
Welcome along to this shorter episode of Paranormal After Dark. I am your host, the Roadie, talking all things paranormal, the weird and wonderful. Recently, you'll remember I had a chat with Sean Brandon, a pagan, and Bex Stokes, a witch, about the paranormal and their experiences of the paranormal, and does it differ from, I guess, mainstream thought. This week I've got a chat with them both regarding religion. We're going to talk about paganism, Satanism, and a belief system of mine, the ancient astronaut theory, if you like, ancient alien theory. So with that, we'll get into it shortly, with Bex and I talking about the ancient astronaut theory, and then that'll be followed up by Sean and I speaking about paganism and Satanism. And of course, a big thanks to Sins of Eve for providing the intro song, Creeping.
I don't think ancestor. I think everything happens in a cycle and it comes back. I think ancestor is all around us, but I think ancestor's ancestor is all around us. I think ancestor's ancestor's ancestor. I think that the people who first carved men in spacesuits on rock thousands of years before spacesuits were invented, I think that is part of the cycle that comes around. I believe that we humans were an accident, but we were never meant to be. We should be algae, we should be lichen, but here we are, another carbon-based life form, and I think it never really dies. I don't think that spark ever really goes out.
Well, see, you're talking about the ancient astronaut theory there, you see. Now, I kind of the view that, you know, there's supposedly a gap in the evolutionary thing, and I think maybe we were kind of let's say an experiment. Like, for example, just let's look at the story of the birth of Jesus Christ. That makes a lot of sense to me, that somebody artificially inseminated this woman Mary. Right? Yeah. There you go, virgin birth. Doesn't that make sense? Isn't that logical? When you read that in the book, do you not get that? When I was 8 years old, I'm reading it going, that makes sense to me, right? Yeah. But there was a band called Dio. I don't know if you're into heavy metal or not, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
yep.
So you know the song Holy Diver?
Yes.
Okay, so that song, I saw an interview with Ronnie James Dio where he said that song was not, it was all the Christians were going, ooh. That song was supposedly about a so-called deity that moved from planet to planet, right? And saved people. And so it was like, you know, the holy diver, they're asking him to come back because he's leaving. Now, doesn't that make a lot of sense? Ancient man sees something in the sky, comes down, saves him, does whatever, and then buggers off to another world. Now, this is what I'm getting at. Do you think, and this is something that I've started to look at in recent times, does a witch's think this way? Because I know Christians will go, woo, when I've said it. Do you think that possibly our spirits have also existed on other worlds and other civilizations, not just Earth?
I have never thought about that, but I don't see why not. I honestly, I can't see why something as ubiquitous as spirit is just here. That would be a little bit weird if it was just here. Put it that way.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. You know, I'm a huge Star Trek fan, and there was a lot of in the different sort of the different you know, iterations of Star Trek where they talked about energy like that, and it was, you know, existing in the Q, for example, and all these different. Now, it kind of makes sense to me that maybe the spirits that we're seeing on Earth interacting with, you know, you'll hear these people, oh, this is a spirit of something that never existed on Earth. Correct. Maybe it didn't. Maybe it's a spirit that's somehow come into our realm and it existed on another planet. But, you know, I mean, it doesn't make it a demon. It doesn't make it a demon.
No. I talk about universe a lot, and when I talk about universe, I'm talking about universe. A lot of witches, when they say, or even Wiccans, when they say universe, they're only talking about, you know, around the moon and back. But I'm talking about universe, like all the way back to the beginning, all the way back, black holes, red dwarfs, everything.
Well, that's what I mean, look at it, Bex. You can't tell me that in the vastness of space, right, that in all the planets that have ever existed and all the planets that still exist, that somehow life and intelligent life only developed on this planet. I just don't buy that argument, right? It doesn't make sense to me.
You're preaching to the choir here.
Because, this is where I think the ancient astronaut theory should be taken a lot more seriously than it is, because I think again you see this is not so much a Christian way of thinking, but again it's a limited view of things, that we're arrogant enough to think we're top of the food chain on Earth, and so nothing else could be more advanced than us. What's to say that there wasn't a civilization that existed millions of years before us? They somehow worked out how to travel across the universe. They were here. They interacted with our ancestors. Perhaps they were the forefathers of the Egyptians and the Mayans and all that sort of stuff. And then they left. And maybe they exist now. Maybe they don't. Who knows? But surely in the vastness of the universe, there has to be. There's just no way that it can be that this planet was a fluke. It just can't be. And that's where I get back to the paranormal. Perhaps some of these spirits, or whatever we want to, ghosts, whatever we want to label them as, how do we know it's not something from another planet or another part of the universe?
Well, look at the Rosetta Stone. I believe the Rosetta Stone was given to me, and I don't believe that there was a stone made by a man that had Greek and Egyptian on it. I think a lot of those old languages, I think a lot of the old hieroglyphs, I think a lot of those things, there are just too many different cultures that could not possibly have known about each other, that had very similar things happen in their past, in their history, that's passed down by either hieroglyphs or word of mouth. It's not possible that we're the first or the only. It's just not feasible.
That's right. Unless they could know, unless there was somebody or something that was able to travel between the cultures. I've talked to Hindus who talk about the ancient Vimanas and stuff, and some of them will believe that they're there. I actually met a Navajo man 30 odd years ago in the desert in Arizona. I was in an old western town. It was one of these western reenactment towns, right, that they did, and I got chatting to this Navajo because I met an Indian, right? And he talked about, and this was a guy who'd been brought up in the Christian society because he was a 20th century Native American, but he was insistent that their stories go right back in time and they will say, the Thunderbird came, right?
Yep.
And brought life to us, and we came, quote, we came from the stars. Yep. That's what they said. We came from the stars.
European culture is one of the only cultures that doesn't have star maps on the tops of mountains in stone. I mean, my sister-in-law is half Cherokee. She bought me a little garnet, a necklace of little garnets from her grandfather's land. And she told me when she gave it to me a very similar thing. She said, these are gifts from the stars.
And how did they know about the stars? How did those people know about the stars?
They've got maps that show there's a binary star. I can't remember the name of it. There's a binary star that it can't be seen without very high-powered telescopes. It can't be seen, but there's one tribe that knew it was there.
That's it, exactly, and that's what I'm saying. It's so interesting. And then you look at ancient buildings like pyramids, and when we're talking about pyramids, we're talking about in South America as well as in Egypt.
Oh, yes.
Those things could not be built by man at the development thing that they were. I just I remember growing up as a kid, and you're probably around the same age as I am, where we were told, the pyramids were built as tombs, yet they never found a bloody body in them. Well, and if you looked at how long it would have taken to build them, it would have been longer than the life of the pharaoh. So I mean, it's.
Have you heard the latest that under Tutankhamun's tomb there's supposedly a room with metallic objects that can't have come from Earth? Well, especially at that time.
I hadn't heard that one. The one that I did hear, and this kind of disappoints me because it's never been found again, but Eric von Daniken claimed there was a similar room in a place in South America that he went to in the 70s that had these metallic discs, and a native took him to it and showed him, and unfortunately no one's ever been able to find it again. But I've no doubt there's stuff like that around. There has to be,
Of course there is.
And when you look at these Egyptian pharaohs, right? I mean, you look at how the whole premise of, we're God men, right? So wouldn't that stand to reason that either A, perhaps they were humans that were bred with humans that came from the stars, or were they the descendants of humans that came from the stars? And you see, this is, and for a few generations, they had a lot of knowledge. Look at the Romans as well. They had a lot of knowledge that was very advanced, and then we lost it. Didn't we lose it because they were either people from the stars or descendants of people from the stars, and as the generations went on, that knowledge got lost? I mean, because to me, with Western society, no one is, and I've asked historians, I've asked bloody religious people, I've asked all sorts of people in my life, how did it come that we had Egyptians, we had Romans, we had ancient Greeks that had all this knowledge, all this, and you look at the Romans, they had technology, they had bloody saunas, and they had flushing toilets, they had all sorts of things, right?
Yep.
Right? And then within the space of 500 years, we're medieval England, where we're living in castles and wiping our asses on leaves and shitting in a hole.
Yep. I know. And cement. We can't make cement now.
No.
That lasts as long as Roman cement.
And that's what I'm saying. Were these people either extraterrestrials, right, from the stars, or were they descendants and they had the knowledge?
We've lost it. We've lost it because since Christianity came in, Christianity has ruined everything.
Oh, for sure. And, the thing that I'll say to, I had a discussion with a lady, and she was in a theatre group with me, interestingly, and she was very conservative Christian, and we had a discussion one night because someone was taking the piss out of her, saying I was an ancient astronaut theorist and trying to wind her up, you see. So she decided she'd convert me. And I sat there listening to all this dribble, and I said, so you've been talking about this guy, Jesus Christ, for the last hour, yeah? I said, so you do realise that his actual name wasn't Jesus Christ? And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, the book that you're reading, right, has been translated, was originally translated into Greek, and then it's been translated into so many languages down through the years, edited by people as they translated it, that what you're reading now is probably not the original bloody story anyway.
And every ruler changed it to only the bits that he liked.
Yeah, exactly. I said, so what you're virtually reading now is something that's quite possibly not even the original text. Oh no, it's the Word of God. I said,
no, it's not.
How's it the Word of God? I said, it's written by 4 disciples that were like generations after this so-called Jesus existed. It's just the whole thing is fucked how they look at it,
Yes, it is.
Well, that was an excerpt from my chat there with Bex Stokes, which about religion and the ancient astronaut theory, I guess. Coming up shortly, Sean Brandon, pagan and investigation team member of Paranormal New Zealand. We're going to talk about paganism and Satanism here on Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie. First though, here is Christchurch band from the 90s, Tempest, and a song of theirs called Believer.
Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie.
And welcome back to Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie. Tempest from 1995's Outcast album Believer. Joining me now, Sean Brandon from Paranormal New Zealand, a practicing pagan. I'm intrigued with the whole pagan belief system, and when I say pagan belief system, the old gods, I'm talking about the Norse. Even the Romans had different gods. You know, the Greeks, they all had these different gods before Christianity just came along and drew a line and said, no, they were all false, bugger off.
Exactly.
You know,
I mean, the Norse side of things is my preferred side of paganism, or heathenry, as other people call it. But that I'm very much into the Viking stuff.
And Vikings didn't have demons. They had mischievous gods, they had bad gods, good gods, but they weren't demons in the sense that the way Christians have portrayed them.
Exactly. And any god that can be worshipped. So they were, even though Loki was he was a bit of a nuisance, to be honest. He was a bit of a menace, but he was still worshipped. He was a god, and he was I mean, they didn't kneel before their gods, but he was still revered.
That's right, and so I'm going to veer off into an angle now that I also find fascinating, and you may or may not know much about this, because people like to connect this with paganism, and I've argued for years that you're full of shit and you've watched movies and you're doing what they do in the movies, right? I actually knew a genuine Satanist once. I knew a guy who was a real Satanist once, right? And you see a lot of, again, people who claim to be Satanists or whatever, and they're calling up Satan. Again, I'd posit that Satan is a creation of Christianity. So so what is a Satanist really? These Satanists that are drawing pentagrams, which is a symbol from paganism and the old religions, and setting it on fire and going, oh, we're bringing in Lucifer and Satan. Bollocks, you are.
So people, I always remember when I first got into paganism, and I was a lot younger then, obviously, but a lot of people said, oh, you're a devil worshipper and this and the other. And I said, no, I'm not a devil worshipper. I don't believe in the devil. Are you a Christian? And they said, oh, yeah, I'm a Christian. So well, it's a Christian deity.
Bingo. So to be a devil worshipper, you have to be a Christian. That's what I told a guy one time. Exactly. And in fact, the person that I once knew years ago, who was a real Satanist, if you like, that's what he said. To be a devil worshipper, you need to be a Christian.
Exactly.
Because
I have no feelings about the devil at all, because I don't believe in him. Like I don't believe in the Christian God, and therefore I don't believe in the devil.
Well, that's exactly my point, and so that's where I thought I'd bring it up on the show, because people like to tie Satan, the devil, into paganism, and it's not actually correct. It's another thing of the Christian church saying, how do we make paganism unattractive to people so they'll come to us? Oh, they worship Satan.
Yeah, and the whole thing with the horned god. I mean, the horned god is like the god of pagans, and the devil we're always told the devil has horns.
Yeah, it's probably a forest god originally, like Robin of Sherwood, Herne the Hunter, that sort of thing.
Herne the Hunter.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the, I've got a set of antlers up on I've got like a sort of small altar area in my office, and I've got a set of antlers there, and people would come and go, oh my bloody God, what's that? And you've got a pentagram there as well. What's going on? You must be a devil worshipper. And I say, no, I'm not. The reason a horned god, the Christian church tied the horns to a devil and said, well, if you worship him, you're wrong. You're doing the wrong thing.
And that's exactly right. And again, they tie the pentagram to Satanism, when in fact the pentagram is an old symbol from the old religions. And also, Satanism is again, like Christianity, like Wicca, is a very recent modern religion. Yeah, the Satanic Bible was written in recent times.
It's in the 60s, I think, wasn't it?
Exactly. And this person that I knew as a Satanist, he showed me the Bible, and I read bits, and I was fascinated by it. And it had nothing to do with the portrayal of Satan and the devil that we see. And that's kind of where I've formed this thing over the last 40 years of Christianity drumming up business,
Yeah, and I think a lot of the satanic. I mean, I follow a couple of satanic Facebook pages, satanic New Zealand. There's Satanic New Zealand, and there's New Zealand Satan worshippers or something, and most of Satanism is just about being anti-Christian. They don't like the Christian church, so they have, they invert the crucifix because it's anti-Christian.
And the person
it
that
offends Christians.
The person that I knew, who was I described as a true Satanist, he summed their whole philosophy up in terms for me that I've always remembered. He said, look, our religion is basically, don't do any harm to anyone else. Do what you want to do what you need to do, as long as you don't harm anybody else, right?
Yep. Totally agree. Somebody once described it to me as sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Well, and is that bad? If no, but seriously, you want to do what you want to do, as long as you don't do any harm to anyone else. Isn't that a good philosophy?
That's absolutely fantastic, and that's what Aleister Crowley lived his life by. Harm none, do what you will.
And that's kind of where I say the whole belief system has been distorted by a book, and I've had people quote the book to me, and I can go through and say, well, that's actually based on an ancient text that I can show you that was like written 2,000 years before your supposed prophet was born. Or that one was stolen from this religion. So you have to even say, is their belief system actually real, or is it just based on a whole collection of stories that were then distorted for I believe for a political end, trying to get Rome out of their homeland or whatever it was, and in fact it was all made up, and they forget this is the other thing I have. I even said this to a girl one time in a theatre group who was going on about this Satanist. I said, here's a Bible of his, right? I said, that was written in the 60s. Yeah, okay. Written in the 60s. How many times was that translated, and how many languages was it in? And she said, what do you mean? I said, your book was written 2,000 years ago, right? I said, and what you're reading now has been translated from the original Hebrew to ancient Greek to Middle English, to Elizabethan English, to modern English, and it's been altered along the way. So how do we even know what anything in there is actually true or hasn't been changed along the way?
Exactly. It's all changed to suit. I mean, it was in the Middle East where the religion started. So, it must have been changed to suit Northern Europe and Western Europe and Southern Europe, and I mean Christianity's huge.
It's right,
it's everywhere.
And if you go back far enough, Islam and Christianity have the same roots, and a lot of the Old Testament stories line up with the Quran stories. Thanks a lot, Sean. And of course, not only those two religions, but others as well, Hinduism, various others. They all have similar stories. Cultures around the world, South America, Africa, Europe, all have similar buildings, similar stories, and they theoretically in those times couldn't be connected. So something was going on. I just wanted to end the show by saying this is not an anti-Christian show. I'm not necessarily bagging them, but I'm just kind of trying to say that, there are other beliefs out there, and why is it that Christianity and even Islam to an extent want to just drive those beliefs underground and not allow them to come out? And as you'll see, things have been manipulated to suit. But I hope you enjoyed the show. I'll be back next time on Paranormal After Dark. This is the Roadie signing off, and as usual, Sins of Eve with Creeping take the show out.
Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie.
smiling for you.